So hello everyone and welcome back to another episode. Now in today's episode, as you can see from the title and from the thumbnail and from everything that's written on the screen, this is the craziest game of the tournament. Of course, this is my craziest game. There were also other very interesting games, but this is a game that I played with the black pieces, and it features two beautiful sacrifices. And I will not rob you of the fun, so let's just see what happened in the game. So my opponent played d4. I have to specify that this opponent is not as strong as the other ones presented in the past videos. This guy is actually only 1600, and he was above 1600, and I say only because I mean, even to be 1600 you have to work a little bit for that rating. So anyways, we have d4, knight f6, c4 and c5. So again, I'm playing with the black pieces, and I play the modern Benoni. So he plays d5, and we have the same line, with e6, knight c3, e takes d5, c takes d5, and now d6, as we had in the previous game. Except in this game, my opponent goes for knight f3, and I said, okay, look, I have prepared this, I'm gonna go g6. And here, if we would have followed the game that I played also in the Benoni in the first round, would have went to g3, bishop g7, bishop g2, castles, and then after rook e8, my opponent played, I cannot remember the move exactly, maybe bishop f4, there was something, but anyways, this was the position that we were gonna go to, and I think this now is very good for black. But my opponent did not go into any of that, and after g6 he played just bishop f4. So here I played a6, because here if I go for bishop g7, there's this ideas. Maybe he goes queen a4 check, and after queen d7, then he can capture this pawn, or if I block with the bishop, let's say, then he can just go back with the queen, attack my b7 pawn, and queen c7. After I defend, now he has this knight to b5 move, and yeah, I mean, the situation could have gotten complicated. Of course, in this position, maybe it doesn't actually work. After bishop captures, queen captures, I might be able to be better here. But anyways, I did not want to go into any of that. So again, after b4 here, I went for a6. And here he went for a4. Again, a very standard structure. So we have bishop g7 and h3 now, played by my opponent. And here I simply castled, because there's nothing else to do. He played e3, and now I played rook to e8. I wanted to kind of go for the same idea as in the previous game, but he played knight to d2, stopping knight to e4 completely. Now, I looked at the board and I said, look, everything is developed, everything is safe. I'm just gonna develop another piece, knight b to d7. And here he played bishop e2, just developing, and he wanted to castle. But now I played knight e5, and you will see this knight e5 is double-edged sword. So we have knight e5 and now castles by white. And now I play rook b8, move that I often play in this Benoni, is waiting for my opponent to make his move, and just consolidating on the queen side. He played queen b3, and now you can see the b7 pawn is defended, so I can move my bishop. I went bishop d7, and now he went for bishop h2. And after some consideration here, I said that, okay, wow, he wants to play this f4 idea whenever he wants, so whenever he can. So actually, here I cannot go for queen to c7, for example, because he just plays f4, and now I did not feel confident, to go c4, queen to c2, and then, just knight to d3, going into captures. I mean, although the engine likes it, I was down a pawn, and I thought he could just activate his bishop easily. He can just remaneuver it via g3 and then go to f2. I mean, although the engine says this is better for black, I did not believe in my chances here, because the one thing is the engine and the other is your play. But here after bishop h2, I made a slight inaccuracy here. I went for g5. I said, wow, I want to stop f4 so bad that I'm gonna go for g5. And here he just captured the knight, and here, funny enough, I captured with the rook. And now in the game he played knight to f3, and this is where the fun begins. So here, I should have just retreated with the rook back to e7 or rook back to e8, and accept the fact that I'm gonna lose a pawn. But I was not ready to lose that pawn. So here, I'm gonna drink a little bit of water, and I'm gonna let you find the move that started the festival. Stay hydrated, guys, and hopefully you found the move. We have rook to f5, and you're gonna be like, whoa, 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 doesn't that blunder an exchange after g4? Well, yes, but actually no. Knight takes on g4, and here, I could have just went for the sound rook takes on f3, bishop takes on f3, go and exchange down and argue that his pawn structure is not very good, and here maybe play h5, trying to take advantage of his weaknesses and enjoy my bishop pair. No, I wanted to sacrifice and attack. So here I went for knight takes on g4. He took with the h pawn, and here I went rook back to f6. And now the engine evaluates this as +2 for white. But I had a lot more in store than what the engine says. Here he went back knight to d2. And here I went for a move that I'm pretty proud of. I went for b5. And this, at first the engine says that this is a mistake, but in practical play, I think this would have been a very nice idea. So he took the pawn and I took the pawn. And now you're gonna say, wait, hold on. Isn't that b pawn just free for grabs? But yeah, but if you capture the pawn, let's say with the knight, then I just go, my idea was just simply bishop captures, and then after bishop captures, sorry, not bishop captures, sorry, my idea was rook captures, and then after bishop captures to capture the pawn here, and this would leave me with two passed pawns, and although I was down a rook, maybe I had some chances here. Of course the engine disagrees completely with anything that I did. It just says bishop c6 and white is perfectly fine. h5 literally doesn't matter. Okay, rook a8 follows, but let's say I move the queen. I mean, maybe this is better for white. I don't know. I just believed in my attack so much that I decided to go for this, and maybe my opponent feared my attack so much that he just went back queen to c2. And of course, I mean, there's also the option after knight captures to just go for a move like rook h6 right away, and then maybe attack with the bishop e5 and stuff like that as the knight is pinned. But I didn't even consider something like that, and he didn't even play anything like that. So let's see what he played in the game. He played queen to c2, and here another move that I'm proud of, I played h5. And again, the engine does not like this move because you can just capture the pawn, and then after rook h6, I don't have anything, just knight c2 e4, and g4 doesn't matter because of knight g3, and that protects the pawn. But again, in practical play, queen h4, maybe he saw some ghosts, I don't know. But I'm pretty happy because here after h5 he just played knight d into e4, and now it's where it begins going a little bit downhill for my opponent. I play now rook h6, and here he goes knight g3. So the same idea, but this time, okay, hold up, let me turn off the notifications. Okay, so it's the same idea, but this time he did not take first, so now that gives me time to take. So here I just played h takes on g4, and they're gonna say, well, you're still down a piece, it doesn't matter that you have two pawns, and white is better. Of course white is better, but let's see if he can convert this. We have knight to f5, and now I played a very interesting move, and again I'm gonna leave you a couple of seconds to decide on which move is the next move that I'm going to play. And it's just a crazy one, and just keep in mind my rook is under attack and I don't want to give up my bishop for that knight. So my move is, are you ready for this? Rook to h4. Like, what? Can't you just capture the rook? Well, yes, you can. You actually can capture the rook, but then again, who is stopping these pawns now? And again, the engine really cold-blooded says, look, rook to a7, you have nothing. You can feel free to push those pawns as much as you want. I'm just gonna give back my rook, and I'm gonna be fine, you know. Let's say h3, you know, knight e4, and you know, let's say bishop f5, and now just bishop d3, and I really do not have anything. For example, you know, queen to h5, he can just take on d6, and after the exchange of bishops, and I push g3, he can go for this very annoying queen f5 move. And now you can really see all my problems here highlighted with just one move. Here I cannot even check because king g2, and then I have no more checks. But anyways, my opponent feared my attack so much that after this rook to h4, he played queen to e4. And this is why I tell you that, you know, I played so confusing, and this is almost like that Tal quote, you know, complicate and they will blunder. And here I played just b4. Now I am the guy that's cold-blooded, and he played knight to a4, and this was a very passive move, you know. His knight is not going anywhere, and I was really proud of my b4 idea. So here after this move I took on f5, and here he took with the rook, you know, with the queen, sorry. Here he took with the queen, and now I play queen f6. And here a good move was to capture the pawn, and then, you know, we would have just moved on. Maybe I would have played, you know, c4, c3, try to create a pass pawn here over on the queen side. You know, I have threats on both sides. Maybe would have been something here, you know, rook a to b1, rook a8 for example, and knight b6. There was play here also, but you know, he just went for queen takes on f6, and this really gives me the initiative. Right now I played bishop takes on f6, and here he played king, oops, not that, sorry, he played king to g2, a little bit of spoilers there, king to g2. Here I played rook to a8, you know, just pinning the knight, but now he played bishop to b5, protecting the knight, and he's gonna move the rook, but it doesn't matter. I played bishop e1, and here he played rook to h1, and now I played king to g7, and now if you capture the rook, now it gets very dangerous, because you know, these pawns now are actually hard to stop. And let's say you play something like rook to h1, after h3 check, you're really lost. I mean, you're not lost right away, but you're slowly but surely going to, you know, rot away, because you cannot deal with threats on both sides of the board. So here after king g7, he of course saw that, and he went for rook a to c1. And here I went for king g6, you know, just protecting my g pawn, and you know, he really doesn't have any threats. He plays b3, and here I play rook a to h8. And now of course the engine is suggesting a move like bishop d3, but my opponent played knight b6 first. And here I played the rook to h2 check. Rook captures, and now king back to g1. And here I played the g3. We had the f takes on g3 and the bishop takes on g3. And now if we evaluate this position, I would say that black is down a piece, but black has two pawns for the knight, and the situation is not so easy. How can you take and attack black's pawns if you're only having a knight, and how are you getting your king out? Because you know, black cannot make any real progress, but white also cannot take advantage of any of black's weaknesses. So we have knight into c4, And here we have f5. We have rook d1, and now here I made a mistake, and this is the first huge mistake of the game. Of course, my opponent had the game won previously if he accepted some of my sacrifices, but he just didn't want to. But here I played rook to h7, and this really loses the game. After king g2, f4, and now he took on d6 with the knight, and I felt like this was really shocking to me, and here I tried to go back and check him again. Rook h2 check, king f3 now, rook f2 check, king g4 now, and now rook to g2. Now he delivered the check on e8, and I played king to g7. He played now he played an inaccuracy, but I have to specify, now he was pretty low on time. So he played e takes on f4. And why this is not good? Because now I can just capture with check, and this is what I did in the game, and after king f5 I can just capture the knight, and now the position is completely equal. But of course there's a lot more to play. So after this, instead of this e takes f4, he could have simply played knight f5 check, and after king f8 he could have just simply saved his bishop, and now the best thing I can do is f takes h3, and just accept this loss basically. But under time pressure he took on f4. I took with the bishop with check, we have king f5, and now bishop takes on d6, and now the play is completely equal. King e6, and now here maybe I had better alternatives, but I went bishop f8. Bishop b5 was played, and now rook g3. He played bishop c4, and now I played rook e3 check. He played king d7, and I played rook e7 check. And this kind of allows him to take the win away, but he played king d8, which again is a pretty bad move. And here I should have just played rook to e4, and everything would have been fine. I should have pushed my passed pawn, but instead I just didn't see that, and I played rook a7. He played d6, and after rook a8 check, it began going downhill for me. King to c7, and now rook a7 check. King to c8, but now just king to g6. I don't have any more checks, as rook a8 check is simply met by king b7, and after I go to d8, now he plays king to c7, and the situation is completely different. Now I have to give up my bishop, and the situation will be very, very grim. But after this king to c8, I just went king to g6, and now he just played d7. And here is pretty much a fourth sequence, rook a8 check, and here he played king c7, just protecting this d8 square. But now bishop e7. And now he makes a crucial mistake here. He plays d8 queen, and this basically is a draw now. But I took with the bishop, which now basically it's not a draw. He should have played king b7, but he did not see that. He played rook captures on d8. And now black is actually pushing for a win. And I couldn't find this in the game, but this is the most critical moment of the game, and this is why I say this is a crazy game, because here I should have just went for rook captures on d8, and after this king captures on d8 just push g4. But the idea that I've missed is that after king d7, g3, and bishop d5, I have this very nice move that I'm gonna let you find. It's not a very hard move if you give the position some time, and the move is actually c4. And this c4 move is actually very forcing. You have to take with the b pawn, and after b3, c5 or bishop e4 check. I mean, you can throw in a check, king g5, and now c5. Now after b2, c6, g2, c7, g1 queen, c8 queen, and queen d4 check. My opponent would have had king to c7, And then, you know, I would have had to check him some more times, but I doubt that in the time pressure that he was under a minute, that he would find every single move perfect. And, you know, if I threw in some more checks, this is kind of a draw, because now he has this very annoying queen c5 check, and he's gonna pick up my pawn somehow. But you never know, you never know. So here I might have had winning chances. But after this rook takes on d8, I couldn't find rook captures and then c4 at some point on down the line, so I just played rook a1. But this is now completely losing for black, and or should I say completely winning for white. And here after king b6, g4, king takes on c5, king g5, king takes on b4, g3, rook g8 check, king h4, bishop d5, king h3, king b5, rook a2, d4, rook b2, and bishop c6. I simply resign the game, as there's nothing more to be done here. G2 is simply met by bishop captures on c2, and you know, if we trade queens, then rooks, it's over. You know, he just moves his king out of the way, and then this pawn is very much free to promote. So again, this move here was the critical move of the game. I should have taken on d8. But anyways, if I would have seen that, maybe the tournament would have gone better, because this was played in the third round, and I mean, you know, maybe I would have felt more motivated to push for more even in the next rounds. But who knows? Who knows? Anyways, this was the game. Hopefully you enjoyed it, and thank you guys for watching. I'll see you guys in the next video. Kowalski out.